Imagine this. You find yourself at the heart of a fierce quarrel. Your pulse races. Every word exchanged is like a sharpened blade. Each phrase a fresh clash on the battlefield. You meticulously formulate your next reply, determined to assert your viewpoint. Yet the person across from you, they're locked in the same dance, neither side truly listening, both just hunting for a moment to counterattack. Then suddenly, Nietzsche appears, not as a judge, not offering a side to take, but quietly leaning in to murmur something deeply unsettling. You've already lost. But how? You're fighting back, standing firm, defending your dignity. How could that possibly mean defeat? Because in Nietzsche's eyes, the moment you become ensnared in this struggle, you've already relinquished control. True power, he says, isn't found in relentless battling to prove yourself right, but in something far more surprising. So, what is this secret strength? Why does keeping silent often have more force than the loudest retort? Let's unravel his thinking together and discover the silent tactic that hands you genuine authority. Let me ask you, have you ever felt that winning an argument means you're in charge? That proving someone else wrong gives you the upper hand? Most people do. We're taught to believe that victory belongs to the loudest, the most convincing, the last voice standing. But Nietzsche had a vision that turns this belief inside out. For him, real strength wasn't in speaking, but in self-command. Ever notice how easily arguments can flare up? Maybe you've found yourself swept up in one, emotions rising, voices escalating, yet paused to wonder, what are we really fighting for? Is it really about facts, or is there something deeper at play? Nietzsche would say that most arguments have little to do with uncovering truth. Instead, they're rooted in our psychological needs, ego defense. We argue because admitting fault feels like erasing a piece of ourselves. Our minds recoil at the thought of being wrong. Power struggle. Many disputes are less about logic and more about dominance. Who steers the conversation? Who refuses to back down? Craving validation. Sometimes people argue not for conviction, but because they crave being seen as wise, confident, or formidable. Nietzsche saw all this as a kind of hidden fragility. He believed that if you allow yourself to be provoked, to let someone push your buttons, you've already lost control. Let's pause for a moment and bring it closer to your life. Have you ever noticed that, in some heated arguments, the more emotional you become, the less you actually influence the outcome? Or seen how those who remain composed often end up steering the conversation, almost without effort? If you've ever witnessed this, share your story below. How did staying calm or losing your cool change the result? Nietzsche's notion of the will to power and his idea of the Übermensch, the superior human, are often misunderstood. They're not about brute force, but about shaping reality through the strength of your inner resolve. Sometimes, the greatest demonstration of power is choosing not to react, resisting the urge to prove yourself at every turn. The Übermensch, in Nietzsche's world, isn't easily rattled. He doesn't argue just to win. He's selective, deciding when to speak and when silence serves him best. Because in the end, power isn't about how many words you speak. It's about mastering the entire dynamic. Mini case. Imagine a business meeting. Two team leads clash. One shouts, aggressively pressing to make their point. The other remains poised, listens more than they speak, and doesn't get pulled into pointless emotional back and forths. When they finally do speak, their words are timely and shift the mood of the entire room. Who do you think really holds the upper hand here? Nietzsche would argue that the individual who keeps their composure, who doesn't get swept up in emotion, is the true victor, at least in the game that matters most. Why is strategic silence often more commanding than winning an argument? Silence, when wielded with intention, isn't a sign of surrender. It becomes a psychological lever. When you choose not to react, you force the other person to reveal more of their hand. Your restraint makes them uncertain, causing them to second-guess their own words and motives. The tension that follows unsettles them, shifting the balance of power in your favor. The Übermensch doesn't merely avoid speaking in heated debates. He transforms silence into a sharp instrument. A pause, a well-timed reply, or even a simple refusal to react can turn the entire dynamic on its head. That's why Nietzsche's vision of power is not about perpetual fighting. It's about mastering the landscape before the first blow is struck. Silence, in this context, is never just emptiness. It is a resource, a strategy harnessed by some of history's most formidable minds to prevail in the arenas of intellect, business, and even war. Nietzsche believed that authentic influence, true authority, is rooted in restraint and self-mastery, rather than in endless, noisy disputes. Let's look at a few legendary figures who embodied this principle. Socrates. Instead of shouting down his opponents, he would ask piercing questions, leading others to recognize their own inconsistencies. Imagine a proud Athenian statesman claiming to be the wisest. Rather than confronting him directly, Socrates would simply inquire, "What is wisdom?" With each answer, Socrates' probing made the politician's definition unravel, until, embarrassed, he realized he didn't fully understand the very quality he bragged about. Socrates never needed to declare someone wrong. He helped them see it themselves. Ask yourself, when was the last time a question made you rethink your certainty more than an argument ever could? Steve Jobs. In the world of innovation, Jobs didn't avoid disagreements, he orchestrated them. At Apple, he didn't waste energy on every minor dispute. But when it came to the iPhone's design, he refused to compromise. Engineers wanted physical buttons. Jobs envisioned a seamless touchscreen. Rather than hammering away at their objections, he guided his team through debate and skepticism until the vision became their own idea. The lesson? Jobs knew that it's not about arguing to be right, but persuading others to see what's possible. Miyamoto Musashi. Take the realm of battle. Musashi, the undefeated samurai, mastered over 60 duels. His greatest victories, however, were not about swinging his sword, but outsmarting his rivals psychologically. In his famous duel with Sasaki Kojiro, Musashi arrived hours late, driving his opponent into a frenzy of frustration. By the time Kojiro faced him, he was so blinded by rage that Musashi defeated him with ease. Think about a time when someone's composure rattled their opponent more than any direct attack ever could. Imagine you're in a heated family discussion. Your sibling starts raising their voice, desperate to have the last word. Instead of rising to the bait, you stay composed, responding calmly or not at all. Gradually, the conversation shifts. Suddenly, your sibling is the one who feels unsettled, and your parents turn to you for the final say. Have you noticed how remaining silent in the right moment can completely shift the power dynamic in a group? Nietzsche would say, true mastery is not in endless arguing, but in knowing when to hold back. When you choose not to react, you maintain control of the situation and of yourself. Why is it that people so easily fall into arguments that seem to have no resolution? We like to think debates are a quest for truth, but in reality, most confrontations are contests over identity, pride, and the hunger for affirmation. Whenever we get into heated disputes, we often show more of our insecurities than our wisdom, giving away our weak spots, our emotional triggers, and most crucially, how much we're letting others dictate our responses. Nietzsche saw this all too clearly. His concept of the will to power wasn't just about dominating others. It was about becoming so masterful over yourself that you naturally influence those around you. Modern psychology confirms what Nietzsche intuited a century ago. Rarely are arguments pure exchanges of logic. Rather, they're emotional showdowns, shaped by subconscious impulses and unseen fears. Picture yourself in a workplace disagreement. Maybe it's a debate about a project, or a disagreement over how to handle a client. As the tension rises, you notice something. You're not actually processing the other person's words anymore. You're preparing your counterattack, almost on autopilot. Your brain wants to win, not necessarily to understand. This is the trap of cognitive bias. We filter out any information that doesn't fit our worldview. When someone challenges us, instead of adjusting our beliefs, we become more stubborn. This is known as the backfire effect. Ironically, studies show that the less someone knows about a topic, the more convinced they are that they're right. This explains why online debates, political arguments, and family feuds so rarely end in genuine agreement. The Übermensch, the person who transcends ordinary reactions, doesn't waste energy in these endless loops. He observes, listens, and then decides, is this discussion even worth my attention? Sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. Think about this. Have you ever had an argument that haunted you for days, replaying in your mind, only to realize later that the real battle was with your own pride? Often, the words spoken don't matter as much as the wounds to our sense of self. When someone disagrees with us on a deeply held belief, be it politics, values, or identity, it feels personal. The heat of the moment isn't about facts. It's about defending who we believe we are. Let's try a little thought experiment. Imagine at a dinner table, a relative openly questions your career path. Instinctively, you feel the urge to justify yourself, maybe even snap back. But picture someone else at the table, a calm observer, who simply nods and asks, "What makes you feel that way?" The atmosphere shifts. People lean in, curious. The tension softens. In this small moment, real influence belongs to the one who chooses patience and presence over impulsive reaction. This plays out everywhere. In classrooms, the student who asks a thoughtful question can steer the entire discussion. In friendships, the one who can listen deeply is often the one others confide in. In negotiations, the party who stays silent at the right moment can force the other side to reveal their hand. Here's something to ponder. When was the last time you were drawn into a pointless argument, only to regret it later? Would pausing or responding with a genuine question have changed the outcome? At its core, most arguments are not about facts, but about who gets to define reality. People crave being seen as right, often more than being right. The desire for validation leads us to chase empty victories. Meanwhile, those who truly make history, innovators, leaders, quiet revolutionaries, spend less time in useless quarrels and more time acting with clarity. So next time you sense the spark of confrontation, slow down and ask yourself, am I reacting from a place of insecurity, or am I calmly choosing my response? If you can resist the compulsion to react, you'll often notice a remarkable thing. The energy in the room shifts, and real power quietly gravitates toward you. Silence can be a weapon, but does that mean you should never speak up? The answer, according to Nietzsche, is far more nuanced. If true power were only about keeping quiet, then history's most influential thinkers and leaders would have left the world in silence. Yet, the reality is, the greatest minds chose their battles wisely. They engaged when it mattered, and they withheld when it did not. Nietzsche's idea of the will to power was never about shrinking away from the world or withdrawing from struggle. Instead, it was about rising above meaningless conflict and embracing those challenges that sharpen your mind and strengthen your resolve. Complete avoidance isn't wisdom. It's fear disguised as self-restraint. Think about it. If a blade never meets resistance, it never becomes sharp. A mind that is never tested by challenge remains fragile and unproven. The same applies to life's arguments. Without facing meaningful opposition, your beliefs remain shallow and your convictions unrefined. Consider Galileo, condemned for daring to challenge the established view of the universe, or Socrates, sentenced to death for questioning the status quo. Even Nietzsche himself was ridiculed in his time, his ideas dismissed as madness. Yet today, their legacies endure because they dared to engage in necessary conflict, never out of vanity, but always for a higher truth. There's a key distinction between arguing just to protect your ego and engaging to shape reality. The greatest leaders, philosophers, and innovators didn't seek debate to win approval. They challenged ideas to transform the world. The Übermensch argues not for the sake of his own pride, but when the conversation pushes everyone to a higher level. So, how do you know when to speak and when to remain silent? Ask yourself, will this argument sharpen my thinking or just drain my energy? Is the other person open to growth, or are we locked in a battle of egos? Am I responding because it serves my purpose, or because my pride is under threat? If the answer leans toward growth, understanding, or meaningful transformation, then engagement can be powerful. But if you're simply reacting out of habit or insecurity, silence becomes your best ally. Let's make it practical. Imagine you're in a team meeting. There's an intense debate about a risky new strategy. You've been silent, observing. Suddenly, you realize that speaking up now could help everyone see a deeper truth, one that might save the team from a costly mistake. You choose your words carefully, cut through the noise, and the entire direction of the conversation shifts. In this moment, your influence isn't just in your words, but in your timing, clarity, and presence. Ultimately, Nietzsche's philosophy isn't about never arguing. It's about mastering the art of influence, knowing precisely when your voice matters most. He'd urge you, the next time you're tempted to jump into a dispute, pause. Weigh the cost. Is this a moment that will make you stronger, or just another drain on your energy? Is silence the power move, or is action required? Because true power, as Nietzsche saw it, lives in the pause before you speak, in the decision to act with intention, not impulse. Words are currency. The fewer you spend carelessly, the more each one is worth. So here's my challenge to you. Next time you feel pulled into a confrontation, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, who's really in control here? What outcome do I want? Practice this and watch how your presence shifts. And if this exploration of silent power and strategic influence has made you reflect, please show your support. Hit the like button, subscribe for more insights on philosophy and psychology, and share your story in the comments. Have you ever won by holding back instead of lashing out? How did it change your life? Let's keep building a community where wisdom, not noise, leads the way.